In this tutorial, I will take you through how you can use pivot table for data summarization and analytics. Pivot table is a great tool that assists the user to calculate, summarize, and analyze large amounts of data. To get the best out of pivot table, it is advisable to turn your data into a table. Your data must have headings or column titles. Press Ctrl+T to turn your data into a table. Make sure the My Data Has Headings is checked. Click OK to transform your data into a table. If you do not like the table design, go to the table design ribbon and in the table styles, choose your preferred style. I do not want to see any color in my data, so I will select the first style to make it plain. To make things easier for me, I will name my table as productivity. Let's look at how to insert a pivot table. Go to Insert. There are two ways of inserting a pivot table. The first option is to select Pivot Table. In the pop-up box, you can see the name of my table. This option will give you a blank pivot table to build. The second option is to use recommended pivot tables. This gives you a head start. It provides samples of already analyzed tables to select from. I want to know, for instance, the total salary received by each category of staff. This has been done for me already, so I will select this option. Let's assume the analysis we want to make was not suggested. Then we will have to build the pivot table from scratch. Go to Insert, click Pivot Table. I always prefer my pivot table to be on a new sheet, hence I will check here. Click OK. This is the pivot table worksheet. On your right is the pivot table fields. This is the field section, and this is the area section. You can change the arrangement of these sections. Click on the settings icon and select the most suitable option. This option keeps the field section above and the area section below. This displays only the field section. This shows only the area section as well as this. And this displays the two sections side by side. I prefer to work with this. I want to know the total sales made by each category of staff. To do this, click on the category of staff and move it to the rows area. This will arrange the category of staff vertically, one per row. If you want to place them horizontally, click on the category of staff and move it to the column section. This will arrange them in a horizontal line, one per each column. To get the sales made by each category of staff, move the sales volume to Values. The Values area analyzes fields with figures. By default, the Values area is set to sum up the data values. You can change this. Click on the field and select Value Field Settings. You can choose from a variety of computational commands. When you select Count, it will count the number of times sales were made. Here you can choose from Max, which means maximum, Mean, which is minimum, Average, Products, and so on. For the purposes of this tutorial, I will set it to Sum. If you want to know what makes up the total sales under each category, move the sales volume from the values area to rows. You can also format the values. Right-click on a cell and select Format Cells. Let's change the values to currency in dollar bills with no decimal places. This change will apply only to the cell you formatted. If you want to format all cells simultaneously, right-click on one cell and select Number Format. Do your changes and click OK. You can see that the formatting is applied to all the cells. You can also change the computation of the values in the cells. To do this, right-click on a value in a cell and select Show Value As. You can make them as a percentage of the grand total. You can sort them in ascending or descending order for easy identification. Back to the percentages. You can show your values as a percentage of the grand total, column total, row total, and so on. To get your values back to figures, click on No Calculation. To know who made what sales, drag the name field to the rows area. To remove a field from the area section, click on the field you want to remove and drag it back to the field section. The quickest way to remove a field is to uncheck the field. I'm gonna drag the rows to the rows area to get the maximum sales made by each row, and also change the computation of values to sum to get the total sales made. You can also remove the subtotals. Go to Design, click on Subtotals, and select Do Not Show Subtotals. This will remove all subtotals from the table and leave only the grand total. You can also set the subtotals to appear at the bottom of the group. In the Design ribbon, you can remove the grand total as well. I need the grand total, so I'm gonna bring it back. You can activate it for only rows or columns, or for both. You can change the layout of your report to suit your reporting style. In the Design ribbon, click on Report Layout and select Show in Tabular Form. I prefer to use this style because it categorizes each field under a column heading. The Compact Form style puts all the divisions under one column. The outline is just like the tabular form, just that it removes the subtotal, outlining only the divisional values. You can collapse the divisions under each category by clicking the button next to it. However, if you want to take off those buttons, go to Pivot Table Analyze, and on your far right, click on the +/- buttons. You can also deactivate the field list by clicking on the Field List button. So when you click anywhere in the pivot table, the pivot table fields will not pop up. To activate it, click on the Field List. Let's properly define the headings by removing the sum of from the sales volume. This prompt means the sales volume already exists in the pivot table field. To maintain it, Introduce a comma either before or after it. Double-click on a value to know the data constituents of that value. You can see the various values that add up to get the values in the pivot table. Let's look at how the filters work. I want to know what cells were made under a particular supervisor. Move the supervisor to the filters area. Here, you can select one supervisor to know the cells he or she is responsible for. The data looks clumsy, so I will disable the subtotals. If you want to make multiple selection, check the Select Multiple Items box and make your selection. Let me show you a more interactive way of using the filter. A more interactive way to filter your table is to use Slicer. In the Pivot Table Analyze ribbon, click on Insert Slicer and select the criteria you want to use to filter your data. Whatever name you will select, the table will return data that relates to that selection only. To select multiple names, click on the multi-select icon and select the names you want. You will notice that any name I add, its data is also added to the table. To select all names or to clear the filter, click on the Clear Filter icon. You can change the color of the slicer as well as expand it, and you can also shrink the slicer. To create another table using the same data source, copy the existing pivot table and paste it. Click into the pivot table you want to work with and go into the pivot table fields to make your selection. This selection will not affect the other pivot table. If you want to make any selection in the first pivot table, click into the first pivot table and come to the pivot table fields to make your selection. In this table, I want to work with period of sales. You will notice that when I check the period of sales, the fields automatically groups them into years and quarters. I can disable the period of sales and leave the years and quarters. When I make a selection on the slicer, it affects the second table by bringing the sales made, but in the years the sales were made. This is because the two tables are linked, since we copied the first table to get the second table. To unlink the two tables, go to Pivot Data Analyze. Click on Filter Connections and uncheck the box next to Supervisor. When this is done, any selection made will affect only the table that has the slicer. If the table contains dates, like in the second pivot table, you can insert timeline to filter your table for a period of time. Click into the pivot table that contains the date. Go to Pivot Table Analyze and click on Insert Timeline. Check the date box and click OK. The timeline is grouped into years and quarters. You can click on a bar which represents one quarter, or select multiple bars to know the sales made under those quarters by the selected names in the slicer. For example, Paulina Johnson made 1.9 million sales, but in 2021 quarter 3, she made 297k in sales. You can change the color of the timeline as well as change the height or width of the timeline. You can also disable the scroll bar, time level, selection label, and the header. The timeline is not linked to the first table. To link it to the first table, go to Timeline and click on Report Connections. Check the first table and click OK. When this is done, any selection you make will affect both tables. In this example, it will show the sales made under Philip Road and the period the sales were made. You can see the amount in the two tables are the same. This is because both the slicer and the timeline are linked to both tables. To delete either the timeline or slicer, click on either of them and press the delete button on your keyboard. Let's say you want to budget for 20% increase in sales, or you want to increase sales by 20%. To do this, go to Pivot Table Analyze. Click on Fields, Items or Set button and select Calculated Fields. Put the name of the new column in the name box. In the Formula tab, select the field you want to apply the formula or the calculation on and put in your formula. So this one will be equal to sales volume times open brackets 1. This one represents the sales volume plus 20%. Then you close brackets. What it means is we are increasing sales by 20%. You will get a new column with the budgeted sales. Thank you for watching this tutorial. Share and subscribe for more content. Let me know your thoughts on this tutorial in the comment section. Thank you.